Welcome to Heart, where we break the silence, bridge the gaps, and bring real conversations about mental health to the forefront. I'm your host, Lee Yaffe, founder and director of The Long Short Road. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Heart. I'm so grateful that you're here. Tonight is just me. We're going to do some fun, interesting exploration together on the topic of using writing as an expressive and healing tool. This is a topic that I really love and feel very passionate about and utilize a lot within the Long Short Road. And as I was preparing to come on and be here with you all for this half hour tonight, I was thinking about, well, what can I share with the audience that you all can take into your lives right now? The only thing you need is a piece of paper and a pen and you're in business. So I thought it would be cool to kind of try this out with you all here. Now, before we do that, let's all take a moment to breathe. And ground ourselves. So I'm going to take one hand and put on my belly and the other hand and put it in my heart. You are welcome to do that if you would like. You do not have to. If you're driving, please do not take your hands off the steering wheel. But if you are able to and feel called to placing your hands lovingly on your body, then you're welcome to do that. And let's take one breath together. That actually felt really good. Let's do another one. So breathe in and breathe out. Okay. So writing as a healing tool for expression. Now, most of the time when I say writing, people immediately go into English class. So writing for a grade, writing a paper, writing because you're being, because you have to. A lot of people don't have a comfortable or even pleasant association with writing at all. Sometimes when I tell people that writing could be used as an expressive tool, people will say to me, "Oh, I hate writing. I'm not a writer. I can't express myself that way." And so here's the first thing I'll say on this. If you are alive, you are a human being with a story, then your story is worthy of being told and shared, and you're worthy of being seen and held in your stories. And you don't have to be a professional and you don't have to have it all right in order to write and use that tool for you. So where does this come from and why do we use writing and what's this all about? So I guess I'll start with sharing a little bit about my personal experience with this, because that's really what the entry point was and how this became a class that we now facilitate to women and men all over the country multiple times a year. So if you've listened to the show before, you have heard me say that writing is my first love, which is true. Long before mental health or suicide prevention or holistic mental wellness ever entered my mind, I was a writer. I was always a storyteller. When I go to my parents' home to visit, still now there's dozens and dozens of diaries from the time I was like 6 until I moved out of the house when I was 26. So many, many years of written material still there. And it was always a tool that I loved and used for my own self-expression. Now, in my early 20s and really throughout different phases of my life, I had experienced pretty intense traumatic incidences, and writing had always been a tool that I could use to help me make sense of what I was going through. But after I got divorced at 23 in 2014, yes, 2015, I found myself not able to write. And I found myself not able to be able to express myself in this very necessary and healthy way for me, because I felt very blocked by the experiences and very, shut down by the traumatic experiences that I had gone through. And it was a major missing piece in my life. And around the same time that I started doing suicide prevention and really working in crisis management and supporting people who were really struggling, I found myself almost desperate to re-access this part of myself and be able to really tap into this tool that I knew could help me immensely. And somewhere along the way, I think it was during COVID, so 2020, I discovered a book called Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. This book was originally published in the 1980s, and Natalie Goldberg, a Jewish Buddhist, of course, uses this technique called writing from your first thoughts, where basically you allow yourself to come as you are to the page and be fully yourself messy, inconsiderate, annoying, bring all your stuff to the table and really just allow yourself from a non-judgmental place to put everything down on the paper. And I had never tried that before. I, like many people, had this experience where if I'm going to sit down to write something, I'm going to hold the pen in my hand and I'm going to sit and think about what I want to say. And then I'm going to start writing out a few words and then crossing them out or erasing them or getting stuck on what I think the flow should sound like or what I think it should, how it should appear on the page. And so often when I was trying to write about experiences that were very intense and very painful that I needed to write about so I could move through them, I found myself feeling very stuck. And so when I discovered this technique by Natalie, that Natalie Goldberg popularized through her book of writing through first thoughts and not censoring myself and not judging myself and allowing the words to just come on the page, I had what felt like a miraculous shift in my ability to process my experiences. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't thinking about what I was supposed to say. I was just writing what needed to come out. So, in the book, Writing Down the Bones, Natalie Goldberg describes writing from our first thoughts like this. First thoughts are where energy is not obstructed by social politeness to the internal censor, to the place where you are writing what your mind actually says and not what you think it should see or feel. And this is very, very difficult for many people. I think in every Writing to Heal class that I've taught over the last two years, there will always be some form of resistance from the participants about writing in this way and writing in a place from a place of not stopping ourselves and not censoring ourselves. And so let's talk practically though. How do you actually write from first thoughts? Because it sounds kind of like nice in theory. Like, sure, I just write whatever's on my mind. But eventually you will get stuck or you start judging yourself or you begin censoring the information that's coming out of your mind. And so the technique that Natalie Goldberg used in her book, which has become a great source of creativity and flow for me, is doing the following. So using a timer and writing with a timer, so setting, 5 or 10 minutes on my phone. And during that time, you keep your hand moving the whole time and you keep writing no matter what. Even if you run out of things to say, even if you feel like you're not making any sense, even if it feels boring or annoying or you don't like what's coming out of the paper onto the paper because you want it to sound a certain way and it's not sounding that way, you keep going. You push through the resistance and you don't stop because it's uncomfortable. Okay? And so that also means you don't pause to reread or edit. You don't, cross out or like go back and try to read what you wrote before to see if it makes sense. You don't worry about punctuation or grammar. If you don't remember how to spell a word in that moment, it doesn't matter. Just spell it to the best of your ability. You forgot to put a period at the end of the sentence. Okay, just move on to the next thing. Okay. And, again, this is hard. I started off by saying that most of us have this frame of mind of writing coming from a place of, schoolwork, being graded for an English class, writing an essay so that you get an A and a gold star. And this is really the opposite of that. And I think that the reason why it is so healing is because of the freedom of fully allowing ourselves to be ourselves and let whatever needs to come onto the paper. It's, it does feel counterintuitive. And I think that's true with a lot of healing. A lot of healing and a lot of the healing work that happens, a lot of the ways that I see people heal from difficulties and traumas and challenges that they're going through or experiencing is by not fighting and not resisting reality, right? And oftentimes we do, right? Sometimes because it serves to protect us, we deny the reality that we're in, or we push away the feelings that we're feeling, or we shut down our reactions to our experiences, maybe because it feels too painful, right? I'm not saying that this is easy. I think I've already said a few times that this is not, right? However, when we can allow ourselves to step into a place of openness and vulnerability with ourselves and be willing to put down what needs to be put down on the paper without judging ourselves, without trying to control it, without trying to have a specific outcome in mind, just going and allowing ourselves to be, magic can really happen. And in saying that though, I do want to clarify and make it super clear that writing is not going to solve every problem you've ever had in your life. Sometimes people, especially when we do writing to heal classes, there's an expectation that I'm coming, to be healed. I'm coming to experience myself in a brand new way and see myself in a brand new way. And right out of the gate, after I do my first writing prompt, I will be a changed person. And that may be, that may be, but it's not going to solve everything, right? And it also can't change the past. Often when we write about painful things, the feeling might be, well, what's writing about it going to help? Right. And I just want to speak to that for a moment because it is a legitimate question. Like, if I can't change my past and I can't change what happened to me, then why will writing about my trauma or the things that I experienced, like, how will that change anything? So it can't change the past. I wish. Trust me, I wish if I had a time machine where I could go back in time and fix everything that needed to be fixed. So all the pain, so I wouldn't have to write about it in this present time, I would have done it already. Right. However, writing about our past does give us the ability to gain new perspective and awareness about ourselves. It gives us the ability to take agency and ownership over what's in our control, which is how do I take steps forward now? And then also taking those steps. I often tell people you can write the most beautiful work you want. Write a great American novel. If what you learn about yourself stays on the page and you don't actually use what you learn to make positive changes in your life, then it's kind of just like a navel grazing exercise, right? And that's not what this is about. This is not about being saturated in our wounds and ruminating on our wounds by writing about our pain. It's about writing about what we've gone through so that we can move it out of us. Brene Brown has this quote. I don't know if I'm going to get all the words right, but I'm going to try. We are pattern making people, and we move what's in our head to our heart through our hands. Okay. So often when you're living with this story, an internal narrative about yourself, maybe it's something that you learned about yourself during childhood. Maybe it's a painful experience or a traumatic experience that you had. Maybe it's even just a problem that's sitting in front of you right now at work that feels way too big and too heavy to take apart. Even just, the basic ordinariness of being human and showing up for the challenges of our lives, when we can sit with our stories and move them out of our thinking brain into a place of feeling through that creative movement, literally of creating words with our hands, we're moving it through us. It does give us the ability to look at our lives from a different perspective. When it's on the page, you see things differently than if it's just sitting in your head. And actually, one of the things that Natalie Goldberg talks a lot about in her book, which I also encourage in all of my Writing to Heal classes, is the importance of sharing our work with other people and reading our work out loud. While it is very, very vulnerable to read your work out loud with others, I have found that to be a crucial part of the healing experience. The ability to write down without judgment, without censoring our experiences, and then also allowing those experiences to be seen by others is a really beautiful way of moving through our challenges and getting to a deeper place. So I'll share a story with you all. I think this was the Writing to Heal that I did in like February of 2024. It was a brand new group of people that I had never written with before. I never know, sometimes we get a mix of people, but it's you never know who's going to show up to these classes. And so it was 10 women from completely different backgrounds, ranging from completely non-observant and like, traditional but not observant, to ultra orthodox and everything in between, women from the ages of 21 to 62 from around the country. And I put it out there when we started that 6-week class that there was no expectation that they would ever have to read their work out loud if they didn't want to. And it wasn't mandatory, and they weren't going to be graded for whether or not they read their work out loud, but that it would greatly enhance their experience in connecting to themselves and also to their stories. In that first class, by the end of that hour and a half, we went from being a group of strangers to bonded to each other. connected to each other from that space holding and that ability to see other people. So it's a really powerful, amazing experience. And I personally cannot get enough of writing with these groups. I always tell people that, yes, I offer writing to heal as a technique, as a class for other people, because I believe that there's a lot for others to gain from this. And I also know there has not been a single writing to heal that I have run over the last 2 years that has not shaped me in some way. Bearing witness to these women and men as they share very deep, beautiful, vulnerable, painful parts of themselves with that safety of the community that we build around these classes has been really, it's just been a huge privilege, honestly. It's been amazing. Another thing that I want to share, another piece that I think that it's important, that comes up a lot when people are using writing as a way of kind of investigating and nurturing and honoring themselves, is this feeling of like, oh, but am I allowed to write about ABC? Right? Am I allowed to write about my mom? Am I allowed to write about my grandfather? Am I allowed to write about this person that hurt me or that person that hurt me? And what if this information gets out into the world? Right? And what if, who knows what, right? Who knows where it's going to go once it's down on paper? So I often will share this quote from Anne Lamott with people. And she says this: "You own everything that happened to you. Tell your stories. If people wanted you to write warmly about them, they should have behaved better." Now, here is what I will add as a caveat to Anne Lamott's quote. Writing from a place of first thoughts is not the same thing as putting your work out in the world to be shared with a broad audience. This is a private healing experience. Can you use first thoughts writing as a way of clarifying for yourself what you want to share with the world? Absolutely. So the reason I'm saying that is because if writing about other people or writing about other experiences that people in your family were involved in scares you because you don't want that kind of information to be out in the world, it doesn't have to go out in the world. It just has to get out of your brain and onto the piece of paper. If you want to tear that paper to shreds or burn it or swallow it or flush it down the toilet when you are done, that's okay. No one ever has to see the work. However, not writing about the things that hurt us because we're worried about what other people are going to think or how it's going to impact other people around us is another form of censoring ourselves that stops us from being fully able to show up to this practice. So again, this is not an easy thing that I'm asking you all to think about doing, right? To sit down with a timer, time yourself for 5 minutes, and during that time, keep your hand moving. Don't pause to reread or edit. Don't cross out. Don't worry about punctuation or grammar. Write out of the margins, write upside down, spell things incorrectly on purpose if that's what you want to do, but just get the words out of you. I do often tell people to ease in slowly in how you write. I do not recommend that you start your first free expressive first thoughts writing session by writing about the most traumatic thing that ever happened to you. I don't think that's a helpful way to start. Start small. Start by saying, I remember, and then write for 10 minutes and see what comes out. Another prompt that I like that's kind of light is look outside your bedroom window or your office window, wherever you're writing, and just scan the scene, see what's around you, and write about that. Pick a photograph that you love of you and of you or you and a person you cherish, and write about the experience behind that photograph for 10 minutes. Give yourself permission to ease slowly into investigating and nurturing and honoring yourself. You don't have to write about, oftentimes people will tell me, well, what if I'm writing about something and I'm not, I don't want to stop moving my hand, but the thing I'm writing about becomes too intense or too extreme. I'm not ready to go there. My brain is not ready to handle that. That's okay. You don't have to push through and continue writing about something if you're not ready to go there. Switch the topic. Write about your favorite ice cream flavor. That's my favorite one to tell people to do. If the thing that you're writing about becomes too intense or too sad, too hard to digest, you're not ready to go there, switch directions and write about your favorite ice cream flavor, but keep your hand moving. I want to invite you all to try this. I dedicated this week's show to this topic because I feel so passionately about the ability that expressive writing has to help us access this deeper part of ourselves. So here's what we're going to do. I'm actually holding in my hands right now the deck of writing cards that we made, that I made. This one is actually specifically the one for men. And the reason I picked this one up is because often when I tell people that writing can be used as an expressive tool, immediately they go, oh, that's a girly thing. Like, that's not for guys. Yes, it is for men too. And yes, there are questions, that you can ask and write about that are more geared towards you. So these are like pretty general. Some of them are more geared towards men, but I'm just gonna like pick a card at random here for all of us to write about. We're not gonna do it obviously now on the show because that would just be dead air while we're all writing. But this is gonna be your homework assignment. I really want to empower you all and suggest to you that you try this. Take 10 minutes, after listening to this show or at some point later on, but make a commitment to yourself to take a few minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, and write in this way and see what happens for you and see if you connect to this. I really have seen the power of the written word change lives. It's definitely changed mine. So here is that one's a little bit too hard. The card I just picked is a little bit of a too hard one to start with. Okay, so here we go. I love this one. Here's the prompt, or rather, there's an affirmation that comes first, okay? I am worthy of love and belonging, no matter what I produce or achieve. And the prompt that you will write on for 5 or 10 minutes is to write a letter to the part of yourself that does not believe that affirmation. That part of you that does not believe that you are worthy of love and belonging, no matter what you achieve. So that is your homework assignment, everyone, to write for 10 minutes on loving those parts of yourself, and writing from the part of yourself that does not believe that you are worthy of love and belonging, no matter what. These cards, the men's deck and the women's deck, are available for purchase on our website, thelongshortroad.com. If you're interested in trying out writing prompts and are looking for writing prompts that are rooted in Judaism and in Hasidus and also psychology, I spent a lot of time, effort, and love developing these cards for you. So give them a try if you want. And as we're wrapping up, I'll just share a story with you all that if you've listened to the show before, maybe you have heard, but I think it is worthy of repeating. So once I got connected to this idea of using expressive writing and using the first thoughts, Natalie Goldberg's first thoughts, that became like my go-to for everything. And at some point over the course of the journey, while I was, using this technique over a couple of months, I think it may have even been a year or so, I simultaneously discovered a book by one of our previous guests and one of the, mental health role models who helped shape my life, Dr. Daniel Siegel. And he wrote a book called Parenting from the Inside Out. And so I was reading that book to better try to understand myself and how I could show up in the world as a person and as a mother. And there were questions on understanding childhood, my own childhood, and from the perspective of the adult trying to understand their childhood, that I was answering those questions using Natalie Goldberg's technique of just writing from first thoughts. And again, I had been practicing first thoughts writing probably for about, I don't know, a year at that point. So this revelation wasn't something that popped up from the first, the third, the fifth, or even the 15th writing experience. This was, work that I had been doing for a long time. I don't remember what question I was answering from Dr. Siegel's book, but there was one question that I chose to write about that day. And so I just started writing, and it was very emotional. A lot of tears were flowing, and like the tears were coming onto the paper and staining the ink, but I just kept going, even though I was smudging the words and they would be illegible later. I just kept going. And at some point in that experience, something came out of my hand onto the paper that I was not expecting. These words: I am not a bad person. I am not a bad person. And when I wrote those words down on the paper, I dropped my hand, my pen, and I looked at the paper and I said, I'm not a bad person. I said it out loud. I was 30, maybe I was probably 30 or 31 when I had this realization for the first time in my life that I'm not a bad person. And that the things that I needed to do, or the things that I did in order to survive the experiences that I had in my life, somehow convinced me that I was a bad, terrible person, unworthy of love and belonging. And that experience of putting the word down on paper and it connecting to my brain in that way completely shifted the way that I saw myself. And you might say, what? Just writing about it was enough to shift that perspective? Writing about it, writing about myself enough times and learning to become comfortable with myself through this experience and not censor what I was feeling gave me permission to bring very painful things to the surface that I had been hiding or pushing down for decades. And so once all of those things had the permission to come to the surface and come out of my body and onto the paper and out of me and into the world, there was space for me to now understand myself better. And so this revelation, I'm not a bad person, really stuck with me and shaped me. Does that mean that I no longer struggle with judgmental and negative and hateful self-talk? Definitely not. Like even as I'm sharing all these thoughts with you, I go into these like self-talk spirals still, right? But it was a really important step, necessary step in my journey and in better understanding myself so that I could better heal. So I hope that you all take this technique with you and try it. Men, women, whoever you are that's listening, just try it out. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next week. Thank you for tuning in to Heart to Heart. If you or someone you love is struggling, please know there is hope and help is within reach. Since 2019, the Long Short Road has been walking alongside at-risk individuals, offering trauma-informed programs, a non-emergency hotline, and a community that fosters healing. No one has to go through this alone, and we are here for you. Discover how the Long Short Road is changing lives. Visit www.thelongshortroad.com or email us at info@thelongshortroad.com to learn more. You can be part of this mission. Sponsorship opportunities for Heart to Heart are available. Honor a loved one, support your community, and help us make mental wellness resources accessible to those who need them most. Until next time, remember, love and connection are the greatest healers. This is Lee Yaffe reminding you, hope is here, healing is possible, and you are never alone. Together, we're walking this long, short road to a brighter future.